Good afternoon. So we go by the Italian way. Buon pomeriggio. And welcome to the University of Arkansas, the Rome Center here in this beautiful Palazzo Taverna, which is one of the most important and beautiful palaces of Rome, dealing with the different sections and wings. We are actually the university is occupying the 1800 part of the wing of the palace, as you can see from the decoration of this room. As long as the other section we will be able to see and to visit in the next hours and days. So welcome. And well, me and Adelina, Modesti, and myself are very excited and also honored to celebrate with you this important milestone. It's really, we are celebrating the fifth edition of this conference, which was born in 2021 in very dramatic time for everyone. So right in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was really born to beat the pandemic, but as I will say in a minute, for other reasons, and in a blink of an eye, here we are. So celebrating with you, with friends, peers, colleagues, and some of you really have been being with us for 5 years. And so thank you so much. Thank you to the old friends, the new one, and thank you for being here with us today. Well, as you can see from the screen, yes, so this is the the program. Today's, no, I cannot see, okay, program, and so it will be my very short speech, being followed by my dear friends and colleague Adelina Modesti. Then we will have the keynote address by Dr. Sheryl Reiss from US. So she's what? She's here already. Ciao, Sheryl.
Ciao, buongiorno.
Good morning. Good morning for you.
Good morning.
And then Alessandra Maso, who will be really breaking an incredible news, but it will be to her to say about it. So Adelina, I will leave the stage to you before starting my speech, and just to say hello.
Yes, no, non funziona. See? I'd just like to reiterate what Consuelo has said, my partner in crime and my dear friend, and welcome you all to this 5th edition of AIWAC, which sees a glance, a look at the female gaze. And we'll be looking at female spectatorship in particular, but also female creativity in various areas of the arts. Francesco Bedeschi was supposed to be here today, but he's not able to come today. He'll be here the next 2 days. And all I can say is enjoy the conference, meet, as Consuelo said, new and old friends, and here's to you all. Thank you. And I'll let Consuelo start. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is a picture of us. That was the third edition of our conference. So it was 3, where you can see old friends, and especially right at the center, our beloved mentor, Professor Emerita Vera Fortunati, who joined the idea since the beginning of this adventure. So, well, the annual International Women in the Arts Conference was founded in 2021 during the global COVID-19 pandemic, and one of the most devastating events since World War II. Its inception marked a response not only to a moment of global crisis, but also to a critical anniversary, the 5th year since the publication of Linda Nochlin's seminal essay, Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists, was 1971. Widely regarded as the foundational text of feminist art history, Nochlin's work catalyzed the emergence of women's and gender studies as academic disciplines and inspired a generation of scholars and researchers. Since his publication, feminist art history has expanded far beyond its American origins, influences scholarship worldwide. In Italy, the legacy of Nochlin's work was notably embraced and advanced by Vera Fortunati and the School of Bologna, which played a pivotal role in disseminating feminist methodologies and fostering new avenues of research in the field. However, a sustained and periodical convention of scholars and researchers in the field of women and gender studies did not emerge in the years following the foundational work of Linda Nochlin and their contemporaries, if we of course exclude the Feminist Art History Conference, which takes place every 2 years in Washington, and of course being created, inspired, and supported by Mary Gardner and Norman Brown. Instead, especially in Europe, sporadic conferences and occasional meetings offered new findings, raised the critical questions, and introduced fresh theoretical perspectives. These events, while valuable, lacked continuity and a dedicated platform for ongoing scholarly exchange, at least in Europe. AIWAC was established to fill this gap. It was conceived as a space for sharing ideas, research programs, and academic studies. A forum open to senior and junior scholars. This is something we really want to highlight. So when we receive the calls, we first look and read the content of the proposal, and only after it we go and see the curriculum. So that's why you see every year independent scholars as well as young scholars, because we really appreciate and evaluate the content of the proposal and importance of the novelty of the proposals, as well as independent and independent researchers. The conference aimed to foster interdisciplinary dialogue, encourage collaboration across institutions and borders, as we will see in a minute, and support the development of innovative approaches to the study of women in the arts. The foundational idea was to launch a call every year where a scholar asked to reply to a given topic. And in 5 years, we have covered 5 different ones. This is the number 1 in 2021 conference, Women in Arts, Architecture and Literature, Heritage, Legacy and Digital Perspectives, which was conceived as a broad and inclusive framework. Its purpose was to lay the foundation for the conference and to reach out to the widest possible community of scholars. By embracing a wide thematic scope, the inaugural edition aimed to introduce the initiative to the academic world, foster visibility, and encourage participation from both established and emerging voices and scholars. Well, the first edition was, here we go, in the first edition, Maria Elena Diaz Jorge was served as keynote speaker, delivering a lecture titled Dal Palazzo alla Casa, Donne e Architettura nel XVI secolo in Spagna. And with her incredible expertise, depth of knowledge and passion, Maria Elena, beyond being a very great friend, she really offered a foundational contribution that set the intellectual tone for the conference. And her pioneering work on women and architecture, particularly in the Granada region and all in the Andalusia, remains a milestone and an essential point of reference for scholars in this field. Among that edition, that was pretty much online, so we were just 3 or 4 of us sitting in this room, and most of the participants were delivering online. And I have to thank right now my colleague, and also him is a partner in crime, Fabio Grassi, who really took up my crazy idea and helped me doing this. And please, just a round of applause to Fabio, because I'm sure that anyone has been reached out by him. And so among that edition's participants, there was the esteemed and renowned colleague Adelina Modesti, who since then joined and shared with me this compelling challenge and journey, being the co-curator of AIWAC and authoritative voice within the discipline since the second edition in 2022. And the second edition, here we are, Women's Legacy in Natural Studies, Health and Liberal Arts, examined the multifaceted relationship between women and the naturalism from antiquity to the contemporary period. It expanded this discourse by focusing on naturalism as a subject of inquiry across disciplines. The thematic scope of the conference encompassed a wide range of topics, including botanical studies and the historiography of naturalism, medieval and early modern treatises such as the Quina Sanitatis, the role of the still life in scientific and symbolic representation. I was just to remember that in that edition, besides Adelina Modesti, there was Patricia Simons, who spoke about the consistent presence and the pioneering role of women in still life. Catherine Powell Warren, whose talk on Maria Sibilla Merian was the anticipation of her monograph on the artist, which has been released a few months ago. There was Loretta Vandi, who should have been with us, but unfortunately she could not join, so she withdrew right a few weeks ago. And Loretta Vandi is the author again of just newly published the book on Eufrasia Burlamacchi. There was Patricia Rocco, she is here sitting with us today, and also Bruce Edelstein, who presented the just released book Eleonora di Toledo and the Creation of the Boboli Gardens. The 2023 edition centered the theme of women warriors, and that was very timely back then because the war in Ukraine just outbroke, and that warring women from the Amazons to the guerrilla girls wanted to trace the presence of women and the representation of women from matriarchal society to contemporary times. And what came out from that conference is that women have been actively engaged in warfare, defending their lands, communities, families, or themselves. And again, a subject which is unfortunately, very timely this far. And well, that edition was really highlighted. She brought kind of ray of sun with us. Here that's the Afghan photographer and activist Fatima Hosseini. It's her, and she served as keynote speaker, but she also gave us with an unusual generosity a lot of pictures, so we had the chance to set up a temporary exhibition with some of the most beautiful, if we can say this, because each picture she takes is really a work of art. So we had this small exhibition, and really she added a vital contemporary and global dimension to the conference, just being constructing a bridge and a link between the history and the modern, early and modern times to nowadays, which is one of the scope and the mission of this conference. And in her powerful talk, I want just to, I remember that the room was full, plenty of students, which is unusual. As you can see, tomorrow is mandatory, so they will show up. Well, students at the end of her talk, some of them were crying, other one were applauding, other one were, they really wanted to stand up and to go and hug her because of the power of her speech, and her every single word meant something. The number 4, I go briefly to quickly to the conclusion. Love, marriage, desire, the civic and juridic status of women from antiquity to modernity, acquisitions, resistance, and destabilization. And here I want to highlight the other friend we got from this conference, which is Juliet Simpson, and really. Thank you, Juliet, for being here since the beginning. So you have been a supporter, you have been, of course, a colleague, but a friend. So, and we are very honored, and it's a word which sometimes means nothing, some other times means a lot. Happy to have you in this adventure. So she served as keynote. She has spread the word of the conference really among peers, scholars, and students, and as a sign of her and our belief that these things can really, this conference, this subject, these studies, this research can really help to grow and to don't I wouldn't be rhetoric, but to grow, probably, to create a better world. And well, here we go. So yes, here we have something which goes beyond the academy, but not that much. So on the right hand side, you can see me and Fabio, and just I think if I remember well, we were struggling with connections or something like that. I wanted to say hello if she is listening to Liana Cini, who has been joining us, also her, since the beginning. And on the left-hand side, besides my daughter, the little one, and there is Arianna Zocca and Ilaria Bompiani, and both these women really again took up my crazy ideas. The first and the second edition. The first edition was so and so, for the reason I have just said. But since the second edition, they again took up my ideas to create each year a dinner, thematic dinner, which was tied up to the subject of our conference. So they created a medieval. Arianna is the cook, and Ilaria is the pastry chef, and Ilaria, sorry, is the pastry chef. And so they created from medieval soup to cake named after Hildegard of Bingen. They created a beautiful Jane Austen pumpkin cake and pie, and so, and there is a surprise also for tonight, of course, but nothing. I don't want to spoil nothing. Let's see and stay for later. And well, let's go to the achievements and goals, because really, again, something which was born in a dramatic circumstances is little by little shaping something more, something consistent. And well, between the many cooperations and relations with institutions, the first, in I can tell, probably the most important is a partnership with Repulse. So Jirki Thibault is here, our publishing manager. Thank you for coming. Well, Repulse came to us thanks to Adelina. Thanks to Adelina. So we are looking for a publishing house to publish the proceedings of the first edition. And Adelina, with her, of course, scholarship and strong scholarships, but also incredible being, because she is an incredible person. And she said, I can talk to my publishing manager, to Paul, and see. And here we go. So since the first edition, we have this partnership, and even if we are a little bit in late for some circumstances, but we are publishing year after year the proceedings. So probably Jirki will say something later about this. And that's why you have found right welcoming you, besides our Mark Wilkinson and what? That's my IT manager saying you can scan the QR code and doing what? Oh, you can go to the homepage of reports. Okay, thank you. I told you without him, I would be a lost person. And so these are the 3 books so far, the volumes so far published. So the first one right at the center is Women in the Arts, Architecture and Literature, Heritage, Legacy and Digital Perspectives. And in this regard, I want also to thank you, Alexandra Massini, who is here. Ciao Alessandra, thanks for coming, because she provided, of course, she delivered a beautiful talk, but also she provided the right connection to have these pictures, which belongs to Galleria Colonna, for free. So again, it's a network of people working with the same scope. And the 2 volumes, the one on the left and the other one on the right, well, they came because of, again, the network we have created, just the word of mouth and people talking to other people, women talking to other women. And so we have these medieval mausoleums, monuments, and manuscripts, French royal women's patronage from the 12th to the 14th centuries by Christine Danca. And the one on the right, Disoriented Gender Territories in Contemporary Art, I think that it was saying something about this volume, because at the beginning we were disoriented, me, Adelina, and Jirki, because of the subject. So, and because of it, and after having, of course, the volume went through a blind, double-blind peer review, we realized that we had to add something to the series, which initially was just women in the arts. So we had to add women and gender in the arts, and that's so to broaden, expand the territory of our research and studies. Just a few statistics. So these are the 3 books, and probably these are dated to July, so probably something has changed, but you can see that we have sold 125 volumes of the proceedings of number 1, the AIWAC number 1. We have sold 105 from medieval mausoleums, monuments, and manuscripts, and 1 disoriented, but it's just been released. So probably, again, these numbers have to be updated. And if you look at the prices, so it's over 100 each, just medieval mausoleums a little bit below 100. So it means probably that we are doing well. So if we're able to sell all these copies. And well, and let's go to the cooperation with other institutions. In January 2024, we were able to create and organize another conference, Women in the Architecture. So ARC stands for Women in the Architecture. We have curated with Sheryl and the University of Texas, the School of Architecture of the University of Texas. That was a groundbreaking conference, I think, because we were facing novelties about women and well, the word that we decided to start using back then, the matronage. So as women were able to support the arts, and especially in the field of the architectures. And the one on the right hand side, it's me and my beloved colleagues and friends. The one on the right is Professor Patrizia Dragoni from the University of Macerata, and the one on the left is the beloved professor Eliana Carrara from the University of Genoa, and it's just the babies of them all, because it is a conference we held and curated here last May on women art historians and critics. That was a network between us, University of Macerata, University of Genoa, and we're missing here Ilaria Miarelli Mariani from the Musei Civici, so she couldn't take the pictures all together because she was in another commitment that morning. I'm sorry, but Ilaria just thinks that Ilaria is here among us. And to conclude, Fabio, è quello sbagliato. Yes, well, it's the wrong presentation. Doesn't matter. To conclude, and we are very honored to announce today, which is a very particular date for many reasons, but this will be to you to tell something more, that the University of Arkansas Rome program has been rewarded is not correct. It's been prized is not correct. It has been gifted. Has been gifted by my very best friend Alessandra Masu, who decided to donate the whole Maurizio Marini's library to this university. And I don't want to cry. I promise to myself. You know why. And but yes, this was the mission, the scope of this conference, to create connection, to unify dots, to create opportunities, and as an educational institution, we do believe that education and knowledge, wisdom must be the elements to change our world. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you, believe me, just everyone worth something for myself, but I have to hug these two ladies, Adelina and Alessandra, for her forever friendships and love. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Consuelo. Mettiamo. Thank you. Okay. I will start this evening's talk with a women's rights convention that took place in Seneca Falls in New York in July 1848. And it is one of the most significant women's suffrage conventions in the United States, and the first to exclusively demand the moral, intellectual, and equal rights of women in the social, political, and economic realms. Over 300 people attended the two-day convention, at which was presented a Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Sentiments, modelled on the US Declaration of Independence, written by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who together with Lucrezia Mott organised the convention. Stanton's declaration called for the right of women to vote, to work and earn, to inherit and own property, insisting, and if not downright demanding, their equality within the family, education, employment, politics, and religion. As such, Seneca Falls stands as a foundational moment in the history of the American woman suffrage movement and a model for future women's rights campaigns and a forerunner of the feminist revolution of the 1970s. It is therefore fitting that our association's celebratory volume, AIWAC University of Arkansas Rome program, celebrating 5 years of women in the arts, edited by the conference's founder, Consuelo Lollobrigida, and myself, be published in a series dedicated to Seneca Falls. Consuelo and I were delighted when Silvia Palandri Vito, founding editor of Publish Her Story, approached us with a view to honour the past 5 years of AIWAC by sponsoring a publication celebrating the conference's success and achievements to date. Together, we invited past presenters to contribute essays to this celebratory volume on their ongoing research on the intersection of women and the arts. We received a number of proposals from which 12 essays were finally selected. My role this evening is to introduce the contents of the volume and its imminent publication by Publish Her Story, an initiative spearheaded by Silvia Palandri, who unfortunately cannot be with us tonight. We sincerely hope that this will be just the beginning of many more such initiatives. Consuelo and I look forward to a rich and diverse collaboration with Silvia and Publish Her Story. Now, I'll just give a little bit of background information on the publishing house, which was prepared by Silvia for us. It's the Publish History series dedicated to emblematic female figures. It was founded in 2024, just last year, and by Silvia Palandri, and based in Rome. Its mission is to amplify women's voices erased by history. And in just over a year, it has published the first translations of Louisa May Alcott's and Jean Webster's works for the Italian public, and recovered texts by ancient Italian women authors. And for next year, a worldwide unpublished work by Jean Webster, author of Daddy Longlegs, is in the pipeline. And its aim is to connect Italian and American legacies of female resistance, creativity, and silence breaking in a continuing dialogue between past and present, local and global, silence and women's voices, as well as inviting female historians and scholars to edit the volumes and to introduce them, to write the introductions. Which brings me to our celebratory volume. The 12 essays published in this celebratory volume, acknowledging 5 engaging and successful years of AIWAC, bring together scholars who participated in the first 4 conferences with exciting new insights into the complexities of women's relationship to the arts in its broadest sense. I'll just flick through the contents of the 12 essays. And say a few words about them. Some of the essays expand on the author's original presentations by shedding further light on the issues initially explored and presenting new unpublished archival information and discoveries as their research has advanced over the years. Such is the case with Loretta Vandi, who discussed the engraved sheets featuring flora and fauna produced by 2 nuns in late 16th and early 17th century Florentine convents at the 2022 conference. And she now revisits the convent environment of Grand Ducal Florence in Le Sorelle Caterine e Margherita della Vacchia, 2 clarisse tra poesia, arte, storia e contabilità nella Firenze Granducale. In this essay, Vandi analyzes further the creative work, visual but also poetic, of Suor Caterina Angelica della Vacchia from the convent of Santa Chiara. Caterina Angelica's cultural production as a graphic artist and poet flourished within the cloister, evidence that early modern creative women could carve out a space for themselves and their work in the sacred and protective walls of the convent. Vandi also introduces us to Margherita Angela della Vacchia, Caterina's sister, and a fellow nun at Santa Chiara, who was the convent scribe and administrator, responsible for looking after the finances and documenting its history in the convent ricordi and other official documents. It was Suor Margherita and Angela who produced a written historical record praising her sister's artistic achievements so as to leave a lasting public memory of Suor Caterina Angelica's many creative talents. At AIWAC 4 last year, Rita Randolfi discussed the patronage and social networks of the progressive woman Marie-Anne de la Tremoille, and now introduces the reader to another woman patron. In her contribution, La caparbietà di una donna, Alex Dissessi e la storia della donazione della Gipsoteca Tenerani al Museo di Palazzo Braschi, here in Rome, Randolfi examines a wealth of unpublished correspondence and documentation in order to reconstruct the protracted 20-year history of Dissessi's bequest to the Museo di Roma of the Tenerani collection, which comprised 10 marble statues and 358 plaster casts, which she had inherited from her uncle Carlo Tenerani in 1929. From these letters emerges the portrait of a strongly determined woman who fiercely fought to have her family's cultural legacy publicly recognized and honored by the Italian state. Continue? Yeah. Okay. Silvia Palandri, who at AIWAC 2021, our first meeting, spoke about the pedagogic role of the Marchesa Colombi's writings. She casts another gaze on this late 19th century literary figure and activist by providing a comparative analysis with fellow contemporary woman author. In her essay La condizione e l'educazione femminile nel pensiero di due grandi scrittrici italiani dell'Ottocento, la Marchesa Colombi e Carolina Invernizio, Palandri investigates these two women's divergent outlooks on the social condition and role of women in post-unification Italy, the former committed to social change and women's emancipation, the other happy to maintain the status quo. And Ellie Leventaki also revisits her 2021 contribution in From Gender-Biased Documentation to Archival Research, Women Visual Artists in Early 20th Century Greece. Or How to Envision an Inclusive Narrative. And she does so to mine the archives once again, ask new questions and draw more developed findings and nuanced readings from the copious data she has collected on this topic since the early stages of her doctoral studies, interrogating the various factors for these artists' exclusion from the official art histories, despite their many numbers and professional status. Other contributors to this celebratory volume introduce new topics and areas of interest as their research has opened up different avenues of investigation. In their joint essay, The Voice of the Artist and the Ethos of Women Writing, She's Got What It Takes by Diana Serlin, art historian Sarah Buoso and the artist Diana Serlin present the latter's written anthology of art writing and biographies of a group of American contemporary women artists. By using biography as an historical methodology, Serlin's text, She's Got What It Takes, posits the intersection of art and writing as a specifically female critical practice. The authors further offer a critical and contextual framework in which to consider the contributions of these artists to the legacy of modernist abstraction, defining their art as affective abstraction, a female-gendered style that, informed by the ethics of intergenerational friendship and fidelity, merges with the rigidity of geometric formalism. The work and the emotional life of the two other modern artists, Paula Modison-Becker and Gabriel Munter, were the focus of Esther Thiele's presentation at AIWAC 4. She now turns her attention to the first female painter of the Italian Renaissance. In Sophonisba, Anguissola and the Lateran Canons, Tiela discusses a 1556 portrait of an unidentified prelate by the artist, proposing two candidates, both Lateran canons, as the possible sitter. She suggests that social and intellectual networks connected Anguissola and her family with the Lombard regular canons and other northern Italian humanists of the mid-Cinquecento, thereby expanding the artist's patronage into ecclesiastical and academic circles. Also contributing to AIWAC 4 in the session dedicated to the family alliances and professional lives of married couples, Cecilia Paolini had examined then, via a case study of one Italian woman, the significant entrepreneurial contribution of foreign artists' wives in creating patronage networks and support for their husbands and their work in early modern Rome. In A Forgotten Woman's History, how the Società Promotrici di Belle Arti in Naples supported the women's art market after the Italian national unification, Paolini presents the findings of her research on a later female network, the Neapolitan Promotrici, a fine arts society in post-unification Italy that proved instrumental in promoting a market for women's artistic production. Paolini reclaims the history of this female cultural society in their support of women's artist professionalisation and their social and economic emancipation, arguing that the Promotrici's agenda was not only artistic, but also ideological and political. And this is something that comes through in a lot of the essays in the volume. Now, at the end of a second edition of AIWAC 2022, Alessia Muroni Ramos, who is here tonight, welcome, also explored a particular historical moment in the intellectual emancipation of women, the 18th century scientific and blue-stocking British context of Mary Delaney's paper, Garden. Her contribution in the present volume, Donne in un interno, gli atelier come spazio di produzione, promozione e affermazione delle artiste, opens with Virginia Woolf's assertion that it is imperative for women to have a room of one's own if they want to write and create, in order to examine the female artist studio as a space of one's own. Leaving behind the shared family atelier of the early modern period, the female studio developed into a constructive, creative and social site of women's artistic independence and professionalisation, sociability and female autonomy. Finally, some presentations that did not appear in the conference proceedings published by Brepols have been included here. Maximilian Geiger presented his talk at AIWAC 3, a conference dedicated to women's relationship to war that dealt largely with representation and iconography of the warrior woman. In his essay, Rubens' Nymphs Supplementing Forces of Warring Women, Geiger focuses on the figures of the Amazon and the nymph as representations of the female form and its relation to nature via a detailed iconographical analysis of Rubens' Battle of the Amazons. The author argues that in the painting's formal structure and iconography, there is a visual as well as symbolic link between the artist's representation of nymphs and that of the Amazon, so that the nymph can also be considered a warrior woman or a femme forte. In Giovanni del Missier's essay, Streghe isteriche tra follia e pazzie, witches and hysterics between folly and madness, presented at AIWAC 2, the psychiatrist draws a distinction between folly and madness, both of which challenge the dominant symbolic order of patriarchy, but in totally opposing ways. Madness, mental illness, dis-ease, is a destructive force that does not allow for regeneration or a new social order. Whereas folly, he argues, is a socially transformative creative impulse that supplants entrenched social norms with new modes of thought and behaviour, as often seen with artists. By examining the case of witches in the early modern period and female hysterics in the 19th century, both groups considered to be mad in society's eyes and persecuted by the church and religion in the first case, and by science, medicine, particularly psychiatry, in the latter, Del Messier argues that these women were not mad but folle, that is, foolish or eccentric, and though not totally successful, at least attempted to resist the patriarchal assault of the female body and the centuries-long domination of women by men, for which they were nonetheless punished. I have left our AIWAC 2 keynote to close this discussion. In a detailed analysis of the flora and fauna paintings of Josefa de Ayala Dobidos, Liana de Girolamo Ceni introduced us to the charming and mystical work of this Portuguese Baroque artist. Ceni's essay, Josefa Figueira de Ayala Dobidos, The Holy Spirit in Marian Paintings, elaborates on her keynote address by taking a focused look at the artist's paintings of the Virgin Mary in order to explore their Christian context and spiritual symbolism, including floral symbolism. She also examines the various iconographic and formal means by which de Ayala Dobidos represented the presence of the Holy Spirit in her devotional artwork, concluding that the artist, through her naturalistic image representing the beauty of God's creation, was able to engage the senses while also evoking spiritual emotions in the viewer. Finally, I would like to thank my dear friend Consuelo Lollobrigida, my AIWAC partner, for her support and continuing friendship over the years of trusting me to undertake this amazing journey with her. To Francesco Bedeschi and the University of Arkansas Rome Centre for warmly accepting me into its academic community. To the University of Melbourne for supporting my research and leave. To Jirki Thibau at Brepols and Silvia Palandri Vito Publish Her Story for their commitment to publishing the conference proceedings and celebratory essays. And to Fabio Grassi and all the support team at UARC for their technical expertise and assistance ensuring that the conferences run smoothly for both in-presence and remote speakers. It has been and continues to be, and will be, I'm sure, a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, now, thank you, Adelina. Okay, Sheryl. Sheryl?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us and to accepting to deliver to share with us your expertise. And well, the only regret is you are not here among us, but welcome. And so Dr. Sheryl Reiss is a renowned scholar, and I don't think she really needs any presentation. She studies on Raphael and women in matronage and patronage from the early Renaissance onwards are milestones for all of those studied this field in kind of things.
Oh my gosh.
And I would leave the stage to you.
Grazie. The only problem, this is actually the wrong PowerPoint. This is the PowerPoint from when I did your class. So I'm not sure how that got called up. Fabio, can you help?
Apparently, I think you opened it. Sheryl?
Yeah, I think somehow the wrong PowerPoint got opened. So I think I just Fabio, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure because I didn't have the PowerPoint from October open, but that seems to be what's here. So I think we just need 2 seconds to
See?
correct this,
Okay.
if that's
I will
okay.
It's okay. Just
Okay.
reopen, close that one and reopen.
Yeah, I'm trying. My mouse doesn't seem to be working. Hold on.
Press ask. No, it's
Yeah.
not working.
Okay. So give me 2 seconds. I don't know. It's my mouse seems to be disabled here. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry, Sheryl, don't worry. Take your time.
It's not a problem.
Yeah. Let me yeah, I'm just not sure why my mouse isn't working so that I can call up the correct PowerPoint. And my touchpad isn't working. Give me 2 seconds.
Yes. If you want, you can open the PDF, the one that we saw yesterday.
Yeah, the problem is I can't access anything. Somehow my mouse is disabled and the
Just try to
touchpad's not working, so I can't open.
restart and reconnect.
Okay.
Sheryl, what do you think if we reconnect
Yeah,
in
I'm really
in 10 minutes, okay?
in how many minutes?
10,
2?
1,
Oh, okay,
2,
yeah, that's
no, 10.
10.
10 minuti.
Sì. Mi dispiace tantissimo, non so che è successo.
Non ti preoccupare, io so fare anche di peggio. Fabio è testimone.
Ok. Il problema è che non posso navigare.
Just restart the computer.
You have to shut down your laptop and start it over. But take your time. See you in 10 minutes.
Yeah, ok.
Ok, Fabio, mettiamo un attimo la mia presentazione. So we... Ok. No, l'ultima slide. This was the right one. Okay, this one. So we, again, we're very honored and happy to leave the floor to Alessandra Maso, again, friend, scholar, and who will be telling us something.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Alessandra Masu. I am an art historian, a journalist, and an author. I love researching and discovering the stories of women artists from the 16th to the 19th century. And I've been collecting artwork by women for more than 30 years. In 2016, in collaboration with my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Consuelo Lollobrigida, we founded the Cultural Association Artemisia Gentileschi. The mission of Artemisia Gentileschi is researching, identifying, restoring, publishing, and exhibiting artwork by women with a focus on Rome's museums, churches, and collections. Our aim is to expand the knowledge and awareness of the vital yet largely unknown contribution of women to art history in Rome from the Renaissance to the 19th century. In 2022, we launched the Artemisia Museum Project, the first virtual museum and multilingual database dedicated to women's achievements in the arts. It is with joy that I share with you today my decision to donate my art library to the University of Arkansas Rome Center to celebrate AIWAC's 5th anniversary. This is my way of thanking UARC for supporting Dr. Lollobrigida and Dr. Adelina Modesti in creating this conference, which has now become an admissible event for anyone interested in gender studies. The core of the library belonged to Professor Maurizio Marini, a leading expert on Caravaggio and the Roman Baroque, who passed away in 2011. He would have been turned 83 today. This gift is in his memory. The books in the library number over 13,000. Pamphlets and periodicals number approximately 4,000, 4 pieces, including international art publications like the Burlington Magazine, Storia dell'Arte, and Paragone. Maurizio Marini was a talented art historian, a connoisseur, and a charismatic teacher. He would have been delighted to have his beloved books made available to international students and scholars to be used as Marini and I use them, as a resource and a source of inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you again. Let's see. That's a little bit. If Sheryl, no, it's not yet. Okay, we can open the stage to questions. You know, there will be a reception down in the library, and after.
Yes, there will be a reception downstairs in the library. We were intending to see the Baroque room of Palazzo Taverna, the Baroque hall, but unfortunately for tonight that's not possible, but we'll do it for, in the next couple of days. Oh, tomorrow we do it. Oh, tomorrow afternoon it's been rescheduled. Okay. Yeah.
She didn't realize that was today. She thought it was tomorrow. That's why. So we will be visiting the Baroque room tomorrow. And, well, there will be a reception, by the way, in the library later. And then after the reception, we will be coming up back here to toast to the anniversary. Fabio, è tornata? No? Any questions? Sì, Patrizia. That is a dream.
Thank you. Just the beautiful image of the library with Alessandra.
No, that was not. It was really to celebrate the donation, but we are really struggling now to find space for the books. So we are probably asking the owners to give us more rooms or to store all the books. So yeah.
Is that where they were beforehand? Is that the image that was used, or is that just from another library?
Another library for Northern of Europe. Yes, it's if I remember well, he's from the beautiful monastery, Benedictine monastery in Austria. So yeah.
Well, we can build something like that here.
That is a really dream, but you know, the very first dream has been just this beautiful gift that we received, and so you can imagine that we are just in the process of doing that, and there will be the time to again to set up the shelves, the proper space to store the books, and so our idea is to create a center study, of course, of the Baroque, and to open it to the public. So it won't be open every day, of course, because we have very limited resources. But it will be initially it will be open on demand, and then time by time, probably one day per week or something like that. So to welcome people, scholars, students, and to use the library, which list, but in this, Alessandra is more precise than me, but so there are titles, very rare titles, and so, or editions that were just looking at, for instance, and yeah, so no, it will be a very simple library with probably IKEA shelves, which cost very, very little.
But just the idea in today's digital age, of course, with all of the wonders that the digital age has brought us, it's just still amazing to have a gift of actual books, which is fantastic.
But we do believe that in a time where, you know, the frontier is the AI, as it was in the past times, you know, in history, really the knowledge, and Umberto Eco's Il nome della rosa speaks a lot about that. No, the winners will be those who have the materiality of the culture. So beyond the importance of AI, I use every day, I use with my students. So I don't want to be, you know, hypocritical. So but I think we do think. So me, Alessandra, Francesco Bedeschi, again, he's not here, but he will be delivering closing remarks on Thursday afternoon, and also from Arkansas. So in Arkansas are firmly convinced that material books could make the difference. So of course it won't be, at least I won't see it, so we cannot digitalize the library, because again, we have no funds to do that. It costs millions. But the paper books, the donation of paper books must be used as such, as paper books. So we all use books, both e-books and in the hard copies. And at least for me, when I go through pages, actual pages, I don't know why, but you know, the idea in my mind, they run away, and I find more connection than just reading ebooks, where I have to say I forget when I read 10 pages. When I arrive to the 10 pages, I have already forgotten the number one. So, but that's my limit because it's my generation. But yeah.
I think they've actually done studies about that prove that there's something about the material aspect that impresses the information more on the brain parent.
I think so. I think so. So I had the chance to spoke 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago with a person who has actually constructed the architecture of the AI over 35 years ago in US. Yes, and we know that one of our partners here just to spend times waiting for Sheryl. So University of Arkansas, for those who don't know us very well, we work as a program for the we work to as the study abroad programs for the students from Arkansas, and we were founded almost 40 years ago as a department of the School of Architecture. And again, right in 2019, before the pandemic, we were moved from the School of Architecture under the graduate students international education. And so besides the core of students who come from Arkansas, we have two stable partnership. One is with Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, and the other one is the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. And just 3 weeks ago, we have celebrated the 50, not 50 anniversary of the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute's program here in Rome. So this person was among the donors who came over in to celebrate the event. And as the art historians of the university, they called me up and said, okay, Consuelo, you have to take this here, and there. And we had the chance to talk. I didn't know who he was. The only things I knew was that he came with his private jet, but he was the humblest person I ever probably met. And it came out that he was the person who constructed the architecture of the AI over again 30 years ago, and then he sold it to people you can imagine. But I was fascinated by him because he's also a musician. So we went visiting medieval churches and the Modesti floor, and they said, it sounds like a music. And he says, hey, ba ba bum, ba ba bum, ba ba bum. They said, this is an actual genius. And over lunchtime, we decided to speak of other things. And they said, okay, please tell me, who will win, AI or us? And he said, no way, us, humans, forever. And that is because and he says because we have to take care of the material culture. So, and it's to us as scholars, I don't want to say intellectuals, but as scholars and people who like to study, and we do this to work, to live, to support the materiality of studies. And just because we have to be the time, and I was with my students to Villa La Farnesina today, and they had their assignments and the homeworks, and they took up their papers, and this is Villa Farnesina, and Peruzzi, and 15, and Raphael, and it said, okay, stop. I don't want you to read these sheets, these papers. You know what? We can ask Siri, come on, who made the Villa KG? And probably Siri says way better than me, than anyone else, okay? So now I want you to give me your feelings here inside, what you're getting from these walls, from these frescoes, or from these columns, from these gardens, and they were saying, looking at me probably as one of the foolish girls, Giovanni del Missier, he's highlighting in his essay. But they said, you're right. So why are you here if you have to read the paper or you read your iPhones? You probably would have been better to save your money staying at home, browsing your laptop, watching a documentary, and that's it. So you have to get the most from the life, from experience. So that's why such an incredible, important gift is worth having books and papers. Sheryl is here? Okay. Sheryl?
I'm here.
Okay.
I've been back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you, Sheryl.
Okay, thanks. I'm very, very sorry for whatever happened with the technical issues, which I certainly don't understand. So my deepest apologies. I don't know if you can see me because I'm seeing the PowerPoint and nothing else. But shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
The stage is yours.
And I'm very sorry that I'm starting so late, but I want to thank the University of Arkansas's Rome Center, Consuelo Lollobrigida, Adelina Modesti for inviting me, and my deepest thanks to Fabio Grassi for dealing with the various technical issues. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to speak informally, And I'm going to present to you some material from an article that is forthcoming in a book titled Reconsidering Raphael, which will be published next year by Brepols. And I have co-edited this book with Yvonne Illette and Linda Wolk-Simon. And the material I've extracted from that essay today, I've titled Raphael and the Ladies, the Prince of Painters and the Female Gaze. And I am crossing my fingers that the slides will advance. So I want to start out by means of introduction to talk about Raphael, women, and beauty, in particular, ideal beauty. And then I'll move into the specific material on spectatorship. In his 1568 Lives of the Most Eminent Painters, Sculptors, and Architects, Giorgio Vasari said, and I quote, "Raphael was a very amorous man who was fond of women, and he was always quick to serve them." And you see her self-portrait. You see a beautiful representation of the Madonna and Child from in his early career in Pasadena, California. And at the right, his so-called Fornarina, which of course is in Rome. Possibly part of it may have been painted by his follower, Giulio Romano. And this painting, very interesting, was in fact in the late 16th century owned by a woman. Vasari also said that Raphael, as one sees here in these three works, was gifted with the imparting of life and beauty to the heads of women. And again, we're looking at things from different stages of his career. In 1557, the Venetian art critic Ludovico Dolce wrote in his Dialogo della pittura intitolato L'Aretino that Raphael painted his women with that delicacy that belongs to their sex. And you see from early in his career and late in his career here, two representations of female nudes at the right, apparently using a live female model. In a very famous letter that was long thought to have been written by Raphael, but now seems to have been written either by his dear friend Baldassare Castiglione, to whom we will return later, or possibly by Lodovico Dolce, whom I just mentioned. Raphael talks about this fresco that was painted in the Villa Farnesina, and I know that Consuelo was talking about it while I was trying to get my computer to behave. And in a letter in Raphael's voice, Raphael is said to say to Castiglione, "With regard to the Galatea, I say that to paint a beautiful woman, I need to see many beautiful women. Yet lacking both in good judges and in beautiful women, I avail myself of a certain idea," this is una certa idea, "that comes to my mind." And so when looking at Raphael's art, one always has to think about this idea of beauty perfected, of ideal beauty. Now, what I'm going to be doing today, and what I've been working on for several years, is an expansion of my earlier work on patronage studies in general, which, as you all know, bring together social history, political history, anthropology, psychology, and economics. And what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the talk today, and then more broadly in this long article, is to expand that, firstly, to think about the role of gender in patronage studies, and very importantly, to think about viewership, the female gaze, the title of this conference, usage, and stewardship. And let's go ahead now and talk a little bit about that. Now, I want to talk first about ideas about female viewers and devoutness. In a very famous passage in the 1548 Da Pintura Antigua by the Portuguese writer Francisco de Holanda, The author puts into the mouth of Michelangelo, whom he knew in Rome before he published this book in Lisbon, and he sets it in a form of a dialogue with Michelangelo speaking with his very dear friend, the poet and very pious woman, Vittoria Colonna. And she asks Michelangelo in this dialogue what Flemish painting is about. And Michelangelo is then said to say, "Flemish painting, my lady," slowly answered the painter, "will, generally speaking, please the devout better than any painting of Italy, which will never cause him to shed a tear." And this is a detail of Roger van der Weyden's famous Descent from the Cross with the tear-streaked faces. Whereas that of Flanders will cause him to shed many, and that not through the vigor and goodness of the painting, but owing to the goodness of the devout person. He then says that these paintings will appeal to women, especially the very old and the very young. He also then says to monks and to nuns and to certain noblemen who have no sense of true harmony. But he's gendering this reception of pious works, in part at least, as female. Turning now to Raphael, we are in Umbria, in central Italy, and looking here at works done for the city of Perugia, where he worked on 4 different altarpieces for women patrons. And I'm going to talk with you about 2 of them today. And it's important to understand that the women who commissioned and who looked at these altarpieces, many of them were interrelated by networks and bonds of family, friendship, and marriage. So I want to start with Raphael's Colonna altarpiece of around 1504-05, the main panel of which and lunette here are in New York in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And here is a reconstruction of the entire altarpiece. And I will end my talk today with this predella panel of the Pietà, which is in Boston in the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. And a very perceptive passage in the 1568 edition of his Lives, Vasari wrote, and I quote, "The nuns of Sant'Antonio of Padova in the same city, that is Perugia, employed him, Raphael, to paint a Madonna with a clothed Christ, as was pleasing to those simple and venerable women." And so he is saying that Raphael made the choice to show the Christ child clothed because of the women, the Dominican tertiaries who were looking at this altarpiece. And here you see the detail of the clothed Christ child. Now, this is an anomaly for Raphael. The Colonna altarpiece is the only painting by Raphael that shows the clothed Christ child. Much more common, again, to show you the beautiful Norton Simon Madonna, is the nude Christ child. And if any of you have read Leo Steinberg's famous book on the sexuality of Christ, you know his arguments about why the Christ child came to be shown nude to manifest the incarnation. Earlier Umbrian artists did paint the Christ child clothed. Raphael actually collaborated at a point with Pinturicchio, and you see one of his versions of a clothed child, a Christ child here. But significantly, this is the only surviving work in Raphael's body of work to show the Christ child clothed. And Vasari attributes it to the spectatorship of the women who commissioned it. Another altarpiece that Raphael painted for a secular patron in Perugia was done for a woman whose name was Atalanta Baglioni. And Raphael wrote, here that Madonna Antalata Baglioni begged him to agree to paint a panel for her chapel in the Church of San Francesco in Perugia. In composing this painting, Raphael imagined the pain felt by the closest and dearest relatives as they lay to rest the body of some loved one on whom the happiness, honor, and profit of the entire family depend. Now, Adelina, of course, was the patron and primary viewer of this altarpiece, which she commissioned for a chapel in which she was eventually buried, and where 7 years earlier than the commission, she buried her son, whose name was Griffonetto. And Griffonetto had actually murdered Adelina's brother, his uncle, at a terrible event that became known as the Red Wedding because of the bloodshed. And Griffonetto then was assassinated by members of a kind of a rival family of gangs, and to revenge the murder of his uncle. And Adelina refused to speak to her son. And she basically went to him when he was nearly dead, bleeding to death in the streets with her daughter-in-law, and was utterly grief-stricken about her rejection of her son, despite the son's murdering of her brother. And so this is the context for the commissioning of this beautiful and very important altarpiece in Raphael's body of work. Crucial to understanding it is the idea of female reception, both by the patron, the primary viewer, and also by others in the city of Perugia. And I mentioned how these women were so interrelated by bonds of friendship, marriage, and kinship. So recently, in a really important article on this altarpiece, Heather Graham wrote in an article titled "A Mother's Wise and Prudent Grief, Reading Raphael's Entombment Through the History of Emotions." And she relates the representation of the fainting virgin to legal constrictions on women expressing grief, but very rarely here the virgin is shown swooning. And Graham wrote, "I prioritized the reception of the work, the way it likely communicated ideas about grief, gender, and decorous emotional comportment to its original audiences." So again, thinking about spectatorship and reception. I now want to go to Raphael's birth city of Urbino, which is in the Marche on the eastern part of Italy. Of course, the site of a very famous palace built by Duke Federico da Montefeltro. I want to talk explicitly about one of Federico's daughters, who was highly educated. Her name is Giovanna Feltria della Rovere. And she is associated with a letter that you see here that was first published in 1754. And you can see her signature over here. Now, this letter is thought possibly to be a forgery of the 18th century, but there are many scholars who certainly want it to be true. Now, this letter, using the language of Renaissance letters of recommendation, in Joanna's voice, says, "The bearer of this will be Raffaele, painter of Urbino, who, being gifted in his profession, has determined to spend some time in Florence in order to learn. And because his father, of whom I was very fond, was most worthy, and the son is a sensible and well-mannered young man, on both accounts I bear him great love and desire him to attain perfection. Therefore, I recommend him to your lordship as earnestly as I can." This is to the Gonfalonieri a Vita in Florence, Pietro Soderini. as earnestly as I can, entreating you for love of me, that for all of his exigencies it will please you to render him every assistance and favor, and whatever such aids and courtesies and opportunities he may receive from your lordship, I shall regard as bestowed upon myself, and shall take from that my special gratitude. I commend and offer myself to your lordship. Now, we know that Giovanna Feltria della Rovere was, in fact, a patron of Raphael's in his early career. There is a letter of Raphael's in which he speaks about painting a cover for a representation of the Virgin and Child for, he calls her the prefettessa, because she was the widow of the prefect of Rome. A number of works by Raphael have been associated with this Madonna, and I have suggested both in publications and a number of lectures that this painting in London, and there are many, many copies, many versions of it. This is thought to be the original, that this is the letter, that this is the painting that is talked about in the letter of April 1508, which describes the painting for the woman, for Giovanna, as a tavoletta. And a tavoletta, of course, means a small painting. And if you look here at the dimensions of basically 28 by 22.5 centimeters, we are talking about a very tiny gem-like painting. And here you see a bunch of people, mostly women, gazing on it when it visited California about 10 years ago or so. In fact, here is that letter now. And what Raphael writes is, I wrote the other day to ask if he would send me, that's his uncle, a tavoletta that was the cover of Our Lady of the Profetessa, meaning prefettessa. This is a very famous Raphael portrait that is in Urbino now. It has been associated with Giovanna, and it's there as sort of a placeholder to give you an idea what she might have looked like around the time that she commissioned Raphael to do this Our Lady, the Madonna. Now, there's another reason that I associate Giovanna Feltria della Rovere with this small painting as its first owner, and therefore its first viewer. And that has to do with a detail in the background, which you see here, in which you see a colonnette here, presumably an mullioned window, and it is very clearly an Ionic colonnette that you see here. And this is an observation that was first made by my friend Linda Wolk Simon, one of the co-editors of this Raphael book that is forthcoming. When she had that idea, I immediately remembered that in the treatise on architecture by Vitruvius from the first century of the Common Era, called the 10 Books on Architecture, Vitruvius wrote that in the invention of the two different kinds of columns, they borrowed manly beauty, naked and unadorned, for the one, meaning the Doric order, and for the other, Ionic, the delicacy, ornament, and proportions characteristic of women. And so my hunch here is that the inclusion of the Ionic order here is a signifier of this being a painting done for a woman, to be looked upon by when he would have been working on this painting. And Latin may well have been reading Vitruvius. She was the daughter of a very major architectural patron. Therefore, my thought use of the Ionic here based on her reading of Vitruvius. Well, let's now go to Florence, whether or not Giovanna Feltria actually recommended Raphael for what he is called his Florentine period. Raphael in Florence, for Florentine patrons, painted primarily representations of the Madonna and Child that were intended for domestic settings. He was doing altarpieces for other places like Perugia, but he didn't really, for the most part, crack the Florentine art market to get large public commissions. So he was mostly doing numerous representations of the Virgin and Child for Florentine domestic settings. Now, the patronage of these Florentine works has been associated traditionally with men. And this is in part because Vasari and documents mention a number of male patrons. But I want you to think about an idea of what has come to be called indirect patronage. And this is an idea that a scholar named Roger Crum put forth in a book that I co-edited on women patrons. You see the title down there, that was published in 2001. Roger Crum wrote, and I quote, "The truth is that my mother chose the house and everything in it, and her will was supreme, if not exclusive. When renovations were made, a chair covered, or a painting selected for purchase or removal. My father is far from being a 21st century patron. He just paid the bills. Patronage for my parents is a process, not a solitary act. It involves them differently, and my mother is involved to an extent that is equal to and usually greater than that of my father." And we need to think about this for Raphael's very famous Madonnas produced in Florence. Here are a couple of them where we know the names of the male patrons. For example, Vasari wrote in the first edition of his Lives, published in 1550, Raphael formed a very great friendship with Lorenzo Nazzi. And for this Lorenzo, who had taken a wife about that time, he painted a picture of the Madonna to place in his camera. And by camera, he means the Camera Grande. This is a reconstruction of what this might have looked like. This was a room where visitors would be received, where the husband and wife would come together to conceive children. It would have various kinds of furniture. This is a daybed called a lettuccio. This is a cassone. And there would be works of art on the walls, very often representations of the Virgin and Child, sometimes sculpted like those done by Michelangelo, and paintings like those done by Raphael. And here is the painting that he did for Lorenzo Nazzi and his wife Sandra Canigiani. And Sandra Canigiani was the sister rather, of another patron of Raphael's, whose name was Domenico Canigiani. And here's his Holy Family now in Munich. And his wife was Lucrezia Frescobaldi. And you have to think that these Florentine patrons and their wives would visit each other, would see these paintings, would discuss Raphael, and were well aware of what he was doing. And again, the women in this domestic setting would have been the primary viewers, because one of the functions of these paintings would be to inspire women to conceive beautiful and preferably male children. Now, up until now, everything I've talked about and almost all of the contemporary knowledge we have of Raphael and women and of women viewers comes from the voices of male writers. There is a major exception. This is a woman I have worked on in various ways. Her name was Alfonsino Orsini de' Medici, here in an 18th century print. And she was the sister-in-law of Pope Leo X, the first pope rather, of the Medici family. And in 1518, under rather rushed circumstances, This beautiful and very famous portrait of Leo X and two cardinals was rushed to Florence to hang at a wedding banquet for the banquet in honor of Alfonsina's son, whose name was Lorenzo, Duke of Urbino, and his wife, who was a French noblewoman. Now, Alfonsina wrote in a letter on the day of the events, which was filled with music and singing and performance of plays and things like that, that this painting hung over the table where the French bride, was seated. And then she said, perhaps not very astutely, it brightened everything up. I now want to turn to two examples in which men construct the voices of women and imagine women looking at art by Raphael. The first of these is after Raphael's death. It was published posthumously in a collection of letters from the great humanist, scholar, historian, and physician Paolo Giovio. And so it was published after his death. And this letter purports to come from the 1530s. And it is very, very clearly a kind of completely made up thing. This is not something that really happened, but it is very amusing and kind of ribald and has a lot to tell us about ideas about female viewers. And it is about the Psyche Loggia at the Villa Farnesina, which I think that Consuelo was talking about when I tried to get my computer to behave. And so here are the frescoes designed by Raphael and executed by members of his workshop for the richest man in Italy, whose name was Agostino Chigi. So in this letter, Giovio recounts this thing that never really happened, but that is very funny. So he says that a gentlewoman, a beautiful gentildonna, came to the Villa Farnesina, and Raphael was there. And the gentlewoman says to Raphael, so again, this is her voices being constructed, "Certainly all these figures are most excellent, but I do wish that for decency's sake, you would paint a nice rose or a vine leaf over Mercury's shame." And she's talking here about Mercury's nude genitals here. So Raphael then quips back and says, "But why haven't you also said that I should do the same to Polyphemus? This is a figure by another artist in another room, whom you previously praised so much." And so the joke here is in the English translation, for example, of this letter, the English translation of the letter is very explicit, and it says that the genitals here were so much larger than those painted by Raphael. The Italian text is a little more subtle than that, but this is a kind of a ribald joke, but it plays on that idea of female modesty, of female women being uncomfortable at looking at male nudity. And of course, this may be the figure that was being talked about. And of course, it plays on that idea that we heard earlier that Vasari told us about the about the clothing of the Christ child in the Colonna altarpiece, because it was being viewed by modest female nuns. And I have only two more things. I'm nearly finished, and so I hope the time's not too terrible. I want to turn now to an elegy written by Baldassare Castiglione, the dear friend of Raphael, who may or may not have written that letter about the Galatea. He was in the court of Leo X. He was the Mantuan ambassador to the papal court of Leo X. And back in Mantua, his much younger wife, Ippolita, and their son remained in Mantua while he was in Rome. This elegy, which is written in Latin, probably around 1519, was written in the voice of the wife. So once again, we have a man writing about a woman's experience of art, imagining how she reacted to the portrait of him by Raphael, usually thought to be about 1514 to 15. The dating's kind of all over the place. But Castiglione writes in the voice of Ippolita, only your portrait painted by Raphael's hand, bringing back your features, comes near to relieving my sorrows. I make tender approaches to it. I smile, I joke or speak, just as if it could give me an answer by an acknowledgement and a nod. It seems to me often to want to say something and to speak with your voice. Your son recognizes his father and greets him with childish talk. This is my solace, and thus I cheat the long days. So this is an extraordinary imagining of visual memory, of interaction of works of art, and again, of imagined female gaze. And so this is now my last example. And I want to turn now to the voice of a Gilded Age Boston American woman, the famous Isabella Stewart Gardner. She was a voracious collector, and some of you, I assume, have visited her eponymous museum in Boston, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. She corresponded extensively with Bernard Berenson, who was an art historian, an authenticator of works of art, and of course, the original owner of the Velleitati in Florence. In a letter of March 11th, 1901, Gardner wrote to Berenson, and buy me a heavenly Raphael Madonna. These are her italics in the letter. And then the following year, she writes to Berenson saying, my remaining pennies must go to the greatest Raphael. Nothing short of that. I have tasted blood, you see. She was very interested in the Colonna altarpiece, but Berenson said that there were issues with the condition. He didn't like some of the stylistic discrepancies in it, and it was eventually purchased by J.P. Morgan, who donated it to the Metropolitan. She desperately wanted Raphael's small Cooper Madonna, now in Washington. She never got a representation of the Madonna, but she did get a predella panel from the Colonna altarpiece in beautiful, beautiful condition. And so this is the painting I showed you earlier. This is Isabella Stewart Gardner in a portrait by Sargent. And I just want to close with the closing line from the article from which this material's been drawn. And so I'm quoting myself here, saying, nearly 4 centuries after it was painted for devout female religious viewers in Perugia, an American woman in Boston would come to gaze upon a panel by the Prince of Painters whose work she so fervently craved, not for its devotional function, think of that idea of women and devout works of art, but for its stature as a work of art by Raphael. And thank you very much. And I'm sorry for all of those problems.
Thank you very much, Sheryl, for that wonderful expose of looking at women's viewing of works of art that are often also produced intentionally for women, whether they are commissioned by them or not. A lot of the quadretti da letto, that usually the small holy families, etc., were intended for a female gaze. And that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you very much.
Shall we do the questions if I can come back, you know, be there tomorrow and Thursday a bit?
But we can ask if anyone has questions, probably if you have time, Sheryl.
I do now. I'm worried about your time, not mine.
No, we have time and there are some questions, so ready to go. I'm going to give the...
I'm here, and my apologies again for all the technical
No,
issues.
don't worry. Don't worry.
Hello, Sheryl, thank you very much. Juliet Simpson here.
Hi, Juliet.
Hi, thank you very much for your paper, and I think you've set some very fascinating, a very fascinating framework for this conference. And I find particularly fascinating this puzzle from how we might think of conceptualizing a female gaze for the Renaissance woman to this very intriguing journey you have taken us on to Stuart Gardner, where we might be able to conceptualize perhaps more specifically conditions through which connoisseurship, training, networks, acquisition, as well as patronage that a woman like Isabel Gardner may have been able to develop her gaze. What I wanted to really ask,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's this question of Roveri, and also you touched on it in relation to the uncomfortableness with sort of Raphael's male nudity. Is there any documentation that is in some way shedding light on whether Roveri or others like her might have had an advisor? There might have been a middleman figure, probably very unlikely to have been a middle woman figure. But in what kind of context and conditions could she have possibly been able to exert a gaze on? So I'm thinking of those figures that are essential in the interactions of the female, of the patron, the woman, and obviously the object of her interest.
Right. Well, as is so often, we're dependent for our knowledge in this period on the survival of documents, and we can make certain assumptions, based on other case studies. There, as many people I'm sure in this audience know, there were places in Italy where women simply could not even sign a contract. They could not even order a work of art. They had to have a male intermediary. We know that the female nuns who commissioned another of his works in Perugia, which I didn't include in this talk today, used male advisors. And in fact, they had heard of Raphael through male advisors. And so, again, you can kind of extrapolate that this is likely something that happened frequently. Now, interestingly, that painting, it's the Monteluce coronation of the Virgin now in the Vatican. That painting does have a nude Christ child in contrast to the Colonna altarpiece. In terms of female voices, beyond a kind of recounting of the commissioning of the Monteluce altarpiece, which I ended up not showing today, there's just next to nothing in women's own voices. And so much of the ideas we have about women being uncomfortable with male nudity come from the pens of male writers. Now, another part of this long article, and I actually meant to write to you about it, but that was just too much to go into in a 40-minute talk. I have a section on Victorian women writers, and Victorian women writers have a great deal to say about Raphael, about his style, about its appeal, about connoisseurship of it, about patronage of it. And these women are Elizabeth Eastlake, Anna Jameson, and Julia Cartwright are the three women that I write about. And they all take different approaches. They're all interested in different aspects of Raphael's art, but they write voluminously about him. And one thing they kind of have in common that they identify in Raphael's art as something appealing to women is the character of Grazia, which means gracefulness, but it's a whole kind of constellation of broad meanings in the Renaissance. And so, you know, what you have to do is to look at the evidence that is out there and to try to extrapolate it from it as best you can about things for which there is not concrete, specific evidence. So that was a great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Well, Sheryl. No, it's gone.
I'm still here.
Okay. So, well, thank you. And if you want to join us tomorrow for a Q&A session, we will be delighted to have you with us. So, of course,
early in the morning here, there's the 7-hour time difference.
No,
so
I want to say. So, of course,
I'll come in the afternoon.
Of course. So again, thank you so much for opening the 5th edition of our conference, and see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
A domani, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we are at the end of the session. So for those who know the way, down in the library, there is a reception. So, and we are all invited to join and just to have a nice talk together. No, hold on a minute. That's Jirki. I'm still looking at you. No, Jirki, you want to add something about the volumes right now? Okay, I'm sorry. So yes, come. So before going down, Jirki Thibault, again, the publishing manager of our series, our support, and well, the stage is yours.
Hello, I won't take this too long because I think after this very interesting opening session, we all are looking forward to the reception also. But just a quick word, I'm Jirki Thibault, publishing manager at Brepols. I'm also the publishing manager that coordinates the Women and Gender in the Arts book series. And yeah, I think you mentioned it was during the COVID lockdown that I think it was Adelina reached out to us with this very nice idea of publishing the proceedings of the first AIWAC conference. And we at Brepols were immediately very enthusiastic about it, but we also had the feeling maybe we can do a bit more on this topic. And that was the idea, the origin of this book series. And yeah, we are very happy that we can put our shoulders under this project. The series provides a platform for great innovative studies on women and gender in the arts, and it's also a place for the proceedings of the conference. The first proceedings are out now. The proceedings of the second conference are currently in production, so they will be available at next year's conference, and also for the third proceedings also well advanced. And I think the series had a very great start. So we have now 3 published volumes. The sales figures are great. They are available both in print and also as an ebook. So there's a lot of interest in the books. And we also have a couple of more projects in the pipeline. So it's really up and running. So if you yourself have an idea for publication, wish to discuss it, feel free to contact me or have a chat with me during the conference, or with Adelina and Consuelo, of course. And we also have a nice bookstall of Brepols books, where you can also browse the proceedings and the 2 other publications of the series, just at a registration deck. So that's for me, and I leave the word to you again.
Because of the timing, we have to change a little bit our program. So before going down for the reception, you're kindly requested to stay here. And yes, we do the celebration first, and then we go down and we have the dinner. So it's yes, kind of dinner. Yeah. So just wait here a few minutes. Thank you. Yes, you can close the globalization, and well, and see you tomorrow morning. So just to